This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey there, I'm Henry Rosoff, and welcome to PIX on Politics Daily. Well, it has been quite a week, specifically here at PIX 11, specifically in the politics department. I am fresh off moderating a debate in the race for comptroller with my colleague Dan Mannarino, with Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine and Brooklyn Councilman Justin Brannan. We had a brand new poll out this week that really showed the race for mayor tightening in a final round of ranking. You have Queens Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani really nipping at the heels of former Governor Andrew Cuomo by about 8 points. It is by far the closest public polling, so we may have a race in this Democratic primary. But as we do every Friday, we like to zero in on some important issues. And actually, in that same poll that produced that interesting result I just told you about, it showed that New York City voters far and away say housing is their number one issue. So let's talk about one of the biggest potential expansions of housing that the city has seen in perhaps decades, certainly one of the biggest ones we've seen in Manhattan in decades. And to do that, let's bring in Councilman Erik Bottcher, a first-term councilman representing Manhattan. How are you doing today, Councilman?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Let's talk about the Western rail yards and that build out. There was some back and forth about whether it should not include a casino. You ultimately did not support that version of the plan, but there's a lot of housing there. Get us caught up. What does the current version of the plan look like right now?
Well, as you said, we changed the plan. The initial plan was a revision to the 2009 plan. In 2009, there was a plan that was primarily residential with 5,700 units of housing. The applicant related came back a couple years ago and said that plan is not financially feasible because a $2 billion deck has to be built over the rail yard before we build anything. And the housing market has changed, the condo market has changed. So they came back with a primarily commercial version of the plan that included a casino to finance the construction of the decking. We had a public process where the community made their voices heard, and the community overwhelmingly said no casino. So I said to them, if you want this plan to proceed, we've got to get the casino out of there. And that is what they agreed to do. They also dramatically increased the amount of housing included in the plan from around 1,500 units to 4,000 units of housing. 25% of the rentals will be affordable, or 420 rentals, whichever number is greater. It will also include a new public school, community cultural facility space, daycare, and a 6.6 acre green space for New Yorkers.
And where is it at in the process? You and I were chatting before we got going with this stream. I guess it just passed committee. A couple of weeks from now, it's expected to go through. Talk us through the timeline here.
That's right. It passed the City Council's zoning committee on Wednesday, and the full council is going to vote on it on June 11th. It's currently before city planning because we made modifications to the plan. We made improvements to the plan. We shrunk the podium widths of the buildings to create an acre of new green space. So this is going to be an addition to the largest addition of housing to Manhattan in decades. It's going to provide a world-class green space that people from all over New York and all over the world are going to come to enjoy.
So let's talk about this from a broader perspective, because there's all this pressure to get more housing built. And it seems like through this process, you guys took what was largely a commercial project that had a casino and turned it into what is largely a housing project. And I think the voters, based on our polling, based on just talking to people, this is what they want to see, right? Like they want to see housing, not this other stuff built. How did this happen? And how do we repeat this success, if you will?
So one of the good things about this plan is that it's a hybrid with both residential up to 4,000 units of housing and commercial space, office space that will help finance the construction of the platform. And over time, it'll produce hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenue for New York City. And I believe that these mixed communities, live, work communities, are some of the best communities. We now know that all commercial districts are not the way to go, that the best kind of districts are live, work, full of life, day and night. And that's what good city planning is about. So I think as we move forward, that's the lens through which we should be thinking. How do we create mixed use districts, residential, commercial, even light industrial uses, all together to create the most vibrant neighborhoods? We've learned from our mistakes in the past as a society on what bad city planning is. We need to produce good city planning.
So what is the next big one to watch in Manhattan? I realize you're mainly focused on your district, so I respect and appreciate that. But since you're so plugged in, can we expect more big housing projects, particularly in Manhattan, in near short-term future? Are you familiar with anything else people could be excited about?
We can expect big things. We're now in the process of a potential rezoning of Midtown South called MSMX, and it would be allowing residential in swaths of Midtown Manhattan that currently did not permit residential. North of Madison Square Park, the Garment District, south of Bryant Park, there are swaths of Manhattan where residential is not permitted at all. And like I said before, we now know that day and night, 24/7 mixed use communities are the best, healthiest communities. So we're in the process. It's going through ULURP currently. It's about to go before the City Planning Commission of considering a rezoning that would permit residential uses, would permit more density to create even more residential units with substantial amounts of affordable housing produced. What we want to do as part of that process is strike the right balance between residential, commercial, manufacturing to create the kind of healthy ecosystem that I've been describing.
I know there's some specific concerns around Soho, and that's a whole nother issue for another day, and we won't get into that. But now that you're talking about it, I'm vaguely familiar with that proposal, so we'll be talking about that a lot in the future moving ahead. Last minute here, just because it is budget season, I wanted to throw out there anything you're particularly focused on right now as they go back and forth in hearing. I know there was a big NYPD hearing the other day. There's been lots of hearings led by Councilman Brandon, the finance chair. Anything you're particularly focused on right now or want to see changed before we reach a final budget deal moving forward here?
One of my major priorities is mental health and addressing the mental health crisis. In our district, we've been calling for some time for something called the Be Heard program, which is a program in which mental health professionals respond to 911 calls for mental health crises. That is not a program that we have in any of the police precincts in our district. It exists in precincts around New York City, but none in Council District 3. And anyone who's been in Midtown Manhattan, on the west side of Manhattan, can tell you that we have people on the street who are suffering from untreated mental illness, who are in crisis. And right now, primarily precinct cops are responding to those 911 calls. We want the Be Heard program in our district, and that's what I'm fighting for in the budget.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the program. Very surprised to hear, honestly, that it's not in Midtown or in your district. That I can think of no better place and did not realize it was there. So I'll follow up with the mayor's team this week. And I know you said it was part of the budget negotiation, but that's a good flag. I appreciate that, sir. Councilman Erik Bottcher, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And that'll do it for this episode of PIX on Politics Daily. We, of course, have the big show, PIX on Politics, 6:30 tonight, Friday, with a re-air on Sunday morning. I'll have a recap of all of our exciting stuff this week, including the poll and the comptroller's race. We have the mayor's chief spokesperson on this evening to ask him all sorts of questions. Maybe we'll ask about the Be Heard program and Midtown issues we were just talking about. I'm going to go flag that for my colleague Dan Mannarino, who's doing that interview. But for now, I'm Henry Rosoff, and you have a great rest of your day.